Hey guys, welcome back to the Wild and Wonder podcast. It is another Monday, so the episode number 3. We're 3 weeks into this, and I don't know about you, but I'm loving it. Longer form content tends to work for me because I usually talk quite a bit. So doing short form content for Instagram has always been kind of a challenge because I always feel like I have a lot that I want to say, and it's really hard for me to pare it down. So this gives me the opportunity to just kind of say it, and then I can cut it down in editing later, which has been super duper nice. But anyway, on today's episode, we're going to get into 5 things that you need to be looking for when you hire a designer. Now, whether that's someone that's going to do your branding or someone that's going to do your website, or if the same person is going to do both. These are kind of like my top 5 things that I think you should be looking for in your designer. So, and these 5 things are honestly things that like I've pieced together over my time as a designer from things that that I didn't do when I first started designing to things that I do now. Kind of condensed down into 5 things. So let's hop into it. Thing number 1. And this might seem pretty obvious, but the first one is price. Now, usually when we look at the price for something, some of us are price shopping. We're trying to get the best deal or the best price, or at least see what the average price is for, whatever the thing it is that we're looking for. So when it comes to designers, we might price shop, 3, 4, 5 different designers and see what they charge. Now, the thing that you need to look for when it comes to price is oftentimes you get what you pay for. And I can say this as somebody that used to not charge very much for what I did. Like, you get what you pay for. Typically, and not always, and there's always the exception to the rule, right? Like, there's always going to be some arsehole out there that like is going to try to charge you a gajillion dollars and is going to do a terrible job. Like, that does exist. But generally speaking, when it comes to designers, the designers that are a lot higher priced, where you're paying $5,000 and up to get your stuff done, there's a reason for that. It's because they're good. And it's not that they just create good designs. It's not just because they're super talented artists and they make something that looks really pretty. It goes so far beyond that. So when we're looking at price, like, we really want to take into consideration what it is that they're charging for. And a lot of designers will like walk you through what you get on the website. And then, if you hop onto a call with them, like, they're going to tell you what you get, what the process might look like, and all of that kind of stuff. And so going cheap is probably not something you want to do if at all possible. I know when you're first starting out, the idea of dropping like $5,000 on branding and a website seems insane. And if you're just starting out, like, there's other things that I think your money could be better spent on. But the first thing to look for is a really good identifier of a good designer versus maybe a not good designer is going to be price. The second thing to look for in a good designer is quality. And I think this kind of goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. You need to be looking at their past work, things that they've done, people that they've worked with, and more importantly, results. Without going too deep, doing brand and web design is so much more than just making your stuff look pretty. So often photographers fall into the trend trap, where they see another photographer with a really pretty website or a really pretty logo, and they're like, oh man, I need something like that if I want to get my business to where I want it to go. Or if I want to have a business like that photographer, I need to get a logo like this or a website like that. And a good designer is going to keep you from doing that. Like, they're going to keep you from falling into that trend trap, and they're going to keep you from like making the mistake of trying to emulate somebody else. Because this kind of like weird thing happens. And even as a designer, I've noticed this as well. But like, we know going in that our market is saturated. So we know we need to stand out. Like, we know that. But when it comes to having our logos done, our websites made, or anything done for our business, we try to emulate and do things that everybody else is doing. And those are 2 totally contradictory things. Like, you can't stand out and do the same thing that everybody else is doing. And a good quality designer is like, they're going to keep you from falling into that trap. And the reason that designer looks like they have quality stuff is because they're creating things that work. It's not just pretty, it's not just trendy, like it works. Like the whole process of brand strategy and going through everything to actually design something that's geared specifically for the client that we're designing for. That's why those things are so effective and so powerful, and why we want to emulate that. But at the same time, you need a designer that's going to do that for you, keep you from the trend trap, and they're going to do the research and do the digging to create something that's not only high quality, but gets you results. The third thing that we need to look for is personality. And this is kind of an interesting one because designers can be interesting. I mean, everybody can be interesting. Photographers can definitely be interesting, but designers, a lot of times, designers don't necessarily always work with the general public. And if they do, there's usually not a lot of communication. If you've ever worked with a designer before that was maybe like a little bit lower end, because I know I used to do this when I first started out, like everything was kind of done through a questionnaire. And so like we might have a phone call, maybe a Zoom call, but I would send you a questionnaire, you would fill that questionnaire out, and then I would get to work. And so you don't always get to interface with those designers and really get to know their personality, which is a huge mistake because, kind of like we talked about with quality, a good designer is going to go beyond just making something that's pretty. They're going to make something that's functional. And to make something that's functional and actually speaks to your ideal client, they have to talk to you and they have to spend a fair amount of time going through stuff with you to pull that out of you. Questionnaires are good, but the answers that you put on a questionnaire are going to be honestly very different from the answers that you give me if I'm asking them to you face to face. Because I can do follow-up questions. I can have you clarify stuff. Whereas with the questionnaire, like you may be pressed for time. You may not be able to fully explain yourself, especially if you're a long-winded person like I am. Trying to type all that out in a questionnaire, like nobody's got time for that, right? And so if all that designer has is a questionnaire, and that's what they're going to create everything off of, like, that's no bueno. Like, you need a designer, you need to look for a designer that has a really good personality, somebody that communicates really, really well, can ask you some questions, isn't afraid to push back on some of your limiting beliefs, and has the capability to dig, to like go beyond just making a logo. And to do that, like you have to have some kind of personality to be able to interact and communicate with people. So that's why the third one is like, make sure your designer has a really good personality. All right, number 4. To me, this is kind of like the most important, but everything above this, so price, quality, and personality, all kind of funnel into this one, which is you want a designer that is doing brand strategy with you. Again, I've talked about this a little bit already, but when I first started as a designer just doing Squarespace websites, I didn't know anything about brand strategy. I didn't know anything about creating stuff that worked, that spoke to ideal clients and converted, and unique selling propositions and value propositions, call to actions, and all of this stuff that like actually makes what you're paying for do what it's supposed to do. I just knew how to make stuff. I knew how to make websites and logos that looked pretty. But a lot of the times that's all they were. They weren't speaking to the ideal client. They were speaking to the photographer. And so with brand strategy, the whole brand strategy is a lot. It goes into your business, numbers, your ideal client. It's a pretty comprehensive thing, but the reason you want your designer to do that is so they're creating work for you that's actually going to do what you're paying them to do it for, right? So we want to be speaking to our ideal clients. We want to attract them, pull them in. We want them to read our stuff and get warmed up and then convert to an actual client. And that's pretty much impossible if you just get some random logo, some random website, some just random anything and throw it up there and expect it to work. You might get lucky. You might be able to go to Etsy and get, like a $50 to $100 logo and go get yourself a website template, do it all yourself. And you might get lucky. It's happened. It does happen. But generally speaking, if you don't know who your ideal client is, and then you try to create logos and websites and other collateral, it's like trying to throw a dart at a dartboard in the dark while the dartboard's moving. Like it's really, really, really hard to be effective with the things that you're putting out there if you don't know what it is that you need to put out there and what you need to put it out there for. And so that's why having a designer that actually does a brand strategy process or framework with you face to face, not just with the questionnaire, is super important, because otherwise you're going to end up paying a fair amount of money to get something that may or may not work for your business. And we don't want to do that. So the fifth and final thing is you want to find a designer. Look for a designer that has a process, a clean, clear, consistent process. A lot of times we'll have this on our websites. Mine's on my website. All my designer friends, like, their step-by-step process is on their website. And the reason a process is so important is because when you start getting into brand strategy and you start kind of diving into some of those things can get hairy. And what I mean by hairy is not necessarily bad, but when you go through a good brand strategy process, you're going to be challenged. You're going to come up to some limiting beliefs that you have, and a good designer is going to challenge you on those limiting beliefs. A good designer isn't just going to be like, tell me what to do and I'll do it. Like, a designer just isn't your hands. You know, you don't know how to work like Illustrator or InDesign or whatever, you know, our tools are. A designer isn't just there to take what you say and then do that. They're not just your hands. Like, a good designer, especially through the brand strategy process, is going to push back. They're going to challenge you. They're going to ask you like really, really tough questions. At least they should be. And they're going to be making you think. And what happens is you start to think about these things. Light bulbs start to go off. You start to confront some of the limiting beliefs that you might have. And all of a sudden you may have started the process of like, oh, I need to hire a designer because I need a logo and a website, and this is the direction that I want to go. You might get halfway into the brand strategy and be like, oh my gosh, like, I was totally wrong about this. This isn't what I thought. Like, this is what I need to do. And you might need to make a pivot. And if you need to make a pivot, you're going to have to make some decisions pretty quickly throughout that process. And it's hard to make good, effective decisions with your designer if the designer doesn't have a good process in place for helping you walk through those things. So if you need, so say you come in and you're like, I shoot couples and engagements. I've toyed with the idea of shooting weddings, but I don't know. I'm just kind of like in this weird place. I just know that I want to shoot people that are in love, right? And if that's kind of how you come into this, like, I need a logo and a website because I want a business so I can shoot, you know, couples in love. And then you get into the brand strategy process and you start talking about goals and where you want to go and what you want to do. And then all of a sudden they're like, no, like, I need to shoot weddings. Like, that's what I need to do. You're going to have to make that pivot, and you're going to need somebody that can help you walk through that pivot and make good, informed decisions. And that's why having a designer that has a clear process in place for you to help you walk through those things, because it's going to happen. I promise. Good brand strategy is going to pull stuff out of you that you didn't know was there. And it's good. It's really, really good, but you're going to have to start making some decisions. And it's hard to make those decisions and have your designer kind of be along for those decisions if your designer doesn't have a good process. I know for me, a lot of the times when I first started, you know, we would come back with like, all right, here's 3 logo examples. Like, we've done 3 logo mockups. We think either of these 3 would be really, really good. Go ahead and pick one, and you know, we'll run in that direction. So they'd pick one, and then for the next 2 weeks, it's just little change after little change. Make it bigger, make it smaller. Can we try 40 different fonts? Can we do this? Can we do that? And I didn't have a process to walk my photographers through to help them understand things. And so we wasted a lot of time and a lot of money doing a lot of silly little things that we really didn't need to do. And so that's why a designer that has a clear, concise process to walk you through is super duper important. So anyway, guys, that is my 5 things to look for in a good designer. So price, a lot of times you get what you pay for. Quality, The reason their stuff looks good is because it was designed with a specific purpose in mind, and it's doing its job. And so that's why it looks awesome. You want a designer with an amazing personality, because a good designer, especially if you're going through the brand strategy process, you're going to be spending a lot of time with, and you need a designer that can work with you, can handle challenges, and can challenge you. 4 is brand strategy. Like, you need to do a brand strategy framework process, some semblance of that, face-to-face or over Zoom, to make sure that your logo and or website is going to come out working and speaking and attracting and converting your ideal clients. And then number 5 is a process. You need a designer that has a clear, concise process in place to help you make pivots, to help you make changes, to help you understand things, and to help you be successful with your new logo, brand, and website. Anyway, that's where we're going to end this episode today, guys. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, let me know. Drop them below. Shoot me a DM on Instagram. I'd be so happy to chat with you guys about this stuff. But until next time, this is where I'm going to leave you.